Hey, thanks everybody. Appreciate you joining today on a Sunday. Seemed appropriate that we make some Sunday sauce, and we'll talk about Nmap a little bit first, and go through the whole thing. All right. Hopefully that looks good for everybody. So I'll give you a background on who I am, a little bit about Nmap, and I was actually just came off of a talk from Brienne where she touched on it a little bit. We'll dig a little bit deeper into some of the tips and tricks you might be able to do, some additional things that you might not think about from a port scanner. And then we'll get lost in the sauce and talk about a really delicious and hearty meal or set of meals that you can have if you just take a Sunday and do a little cooking. And then if we have time, we'll do Q&A. Hit up questions in the Slack. I'm watching that too. And thank you so much for being here. So I am a manager. I run a security operations, engineering, and architecture at Dick's Sporting Goods. We're a little sporting goods company in the U.S. for those unfamiliar, and really talented team. You wouldn't think that if you're selling footballs that you'd have to worry about bad guys, but we do, and we have a lot of work to do there over in the retail space, and we're hiring. Same. I love passwords and GET requests, secrets and repos, long walks on your cloud. I kind of came up from more of a pen testing background. I really got my start in network engineering. So I've been doing this for a long time. You can see the gray beard is real. This is what happens when you work in this industry for this amount of time. And a little bit noisy at times. I've done some work for Sands, B-Sides, DerbyCon, missed that one, and InfraGard. This is actually, I'm based out of Columbus, Ohio, but I grew up and just moved out here to Ohio about 3 years ago. So I'm originally a Pittsburgher through and through, and you can kind of see that by this right here. And this is a very special, terrible target right here. This that's a Department of Justice logo stamped on this guy. And they gave that to me out of Pittsburgh for helping them out with InfraGard. So, yeah, been around for a little bit. Happy to be here for sure. Really great set of speakers. Just honored to be in this company. But all this crap that you're seeing up on the screen right here is really just to say I've seen some things. I've seen a lot of things. Some of those things I wish I had eye bleach for, but you know how it goes, right? We've all seen things if you've worked in Infosec for any amount of time. So this is what information security looks like at Dick's Sporting Goods. You're just trying to stay healthy, live the brand, exercise, do all the right stuff, right? But you're fighting invisible bad guys. And, sometimes that's a little tough. We run into issues. Everybody has APTs that they're dealing with. We have the same thing. What it looks like. So let's start with the sauce, and we'll talk about Nmap. It's a foundational tool. It really got me started in this whole thing. One of the first jobs that I got in information security was because of being able to use Nmap, being able to discover things that are misconfigurations or vulnerabilities or what have you. So it's for me, it's like Swiss Army knife, and also like very near and dear to my heart almost. It really did allow me to start in this industry. So I just wanted to bring this out here and see if folks would be interested. You have to know your TCP/IP to use it. So it's foundational at that level, but I think most folks have a good grasp if they're working in cybersecurity. It does port scans and beyond. And what I mean by that is, being able to pull back things like service banners. You can even do vulnerability scanning. So there's a ton of stuff that you can do with it. And we'll focus on the beyond stuff here. We won't spend too much time on the basics. So there's, if you're going to start doing a scan, you should do so with a good idea of what you actually care about in a scan. So discovery scans are a great way to really understand what your scope looks like so that you're not scanning the world. So you can do some really quick and kind of dirty discovery scans that'll, all you're looking for is just a response. If I send a packet to you and you respond, then I'm interested, right? But I'll build out my scope of what I'm actually going to dig into based on what a discovery scan returns. And yeah, you can't secure what you don't know about, right? This is something we deal with every day as information security professionals. Just be mindful if you're going to be doing some any sort of port scanning, discovery scanning, whatever. Be mindful of your egress filters. So a lot of times, you want to take a look at what your perimeter looks like, and that that term is kind of dated and going away nowadays. But if you're scanning a /24 or some network that you own or are interested in or are permitted to do pen testing on, whatever, be mindful of the egress filters that might be applied to you. So what I mean by that is, if you land on a system, you're not sure what you're allowed to scan outbound. There are ways to test for that. A lot of like residential ISPs do port filtering, and they're trying to protect their customers, right? But they're also trying to protect their own butts. And so a lot of times you'll find egress filters applied to Comcast, for example, or AT&T. They all do it. This actually bit me once at a previous organization I worked for. We had brought in it was a Comcast for business line, and we would do regular external scans of our environment, and everything would come back clean, right? And then I jumped over from my house and just did basically the same thing, and found that we had a couple hosts that were listening on TCP 445 externally, which is not good if you know anything about that. So turned out to be nothing. It was a load balancer that was relaying traffic back to nothing. But we didn't see that from our Comcast for business line, and that's because they intentionally filter egress traffic heading towards TCP 445 in an attempt to like block worms and other malware and that kind of stuff. So just be mindful that and if you scan through a pfSense box, for example, pfSense, you can configure proxying and other things there. So just be mindful. You should do this probably from a VPS. Spin up a VM instance in GCP or AWS, whatever, and just make sure that you aren't being blocked. And you can use this allports.exposed, which is a really great tool for seeing if you are being subject to egress filtering, because it listens on all ports, as the name kind of suggests. So really easy way to see what ports are open to you, and hopefully you're not getting blocked on any of them. And yeah, if you're doing this in an environment where you have a blue team that's monitoring traffic and that sort of thing, like maybe let them know that you're going to run some of these scans, because you're definitely going to light things up for their alarms and that sort of thing. So this is a command that you can use. What this is doing, you should always be root when you're running Nmap, just because it opens up all of the different scan types. If you're not root, you're just going to get TCP connect scans, and that just doesn't allow you to craft packets or do any of the sort of interesting discovery that you would do if you were root. So always sudo, and then the -vv makes it very verbose. The SN says, okay, I don't want to do a port scan, so don't do any of your normal port scan stuff. And then some of these other options here, P0, PE, PP, PM. So these are ultimately different types of discovery. PE is your ICMP echo or your ICMP discovery, but it's not necessarily using echo. It uses some other other ICMP tests as well. And the same for the other guys. This one here is it's an IP protocol ping, so we'll do things like IGMP, IP in IP. So these are all really good for discovery, and then you can either list your targets on the command line, or you can use an input list, which I highly suggest. Yeah, show me very verbosely without a port scan, you know, using all these different probes. That's what that says. So you can add a dash PA or dash PS or a dash PU. So that's going to be ACK scan, SYN scan, UDP scan to the last command. And again, we're just looking for any kind of response. We just want something to say, I'm out here, so that we can dig into it a little further. We don't want to totally beat it down with all the different things that Nmap can do. Yeah, and always, it's the easiest thing if you're going after anything more complex than a couple hosts or a couple subnets. Use the -il for input list, and then output via -oa. So there's 4 different output formats that Nmap can dump out to. -on is normal, -og is greppable, really easy to search. -ox is XML, and you need it if you ever want to resume. You need that output. So, if you're not worried about a couple extra, kilobytes of storage, just -oa it and dump it out there. And then you can do a blind discovery as well with the -pn. But that's ultimately going to negate some of the other commands above. So it's a Swiss Army knife. Use it as you need it. All right. Well, that's a disaster if you try to read it, but it's not that bad. So this is one of the discovery commands that I like to use. So we're going to do an ACK scan on a lot of common ports, and basically the same ports we're going to do a SYN discovery on, and then UDP as well. And these are just common UDP ports that are out there. If you try to do everything, you're going to be there for a while, and you don't want to spend all day just trying to figure out. And the UDP scanning, right? If you know how UDP works, it's not super accurate anyway. So if you try to go after 65,535 ports on UDP, you'll be waiting a bit. And then, as you can see at the end, we're doing an input list of sources.txt and -oa for discovery. And what this will ultimately output is discovery.nmap, which is the normal output, discovery.gnmap, and so on. So you'll end up with 3 files as a result of this one command. So the idea is, do your discovery and then take that and go deeper with it. So like I said, always be root. If you're trying to send weird packets, you can only send weird packets if you're root. And then, -ss, then you can see this a little different, -su, where you're using a lowercase s. These are indicating TCP SYN and UDP scans. So these are actual port scans. And -a is the aggressive command. So this will execute a number of Lua scripts, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But it'll execute a number of Lua scripts that will do things like OS discovery, services running. If you're going against a Windows machine, it'll bring back like its NetBIOS host name and other things like that. It'll pull back banners for all sorts of stuff. And it's just really handy if you're trying to figure out what is this thing that I'm looking at. It's just popped up on the network. I have no idea what it is. It's definitely noisy. It's definitely going to make alarms for the blue team if they're watching. So use sparingly or use contextually. It's not something you just want to tack on in every single scenario. And that's what this kind of looks like. So this is a little different now. We're doing the -a for aggressive, SUSS for UDP and SYN scan. -pn, we're not going to do a discovery because we already know from what we just did what's alive or what we want to target. The dash T4 I just threw in there. So this is a timing parameter to say that we're going to be pretty aggressive with our timing. The default is dash 3, and you can go from 1 to 5 here. Dash VV for very verbose. Max host group, this is just limiting the number of hosts that you're scanning at once, and it's kind of a performance thing. And then the dash P, we're going to indicate which ports we're going after. And so for TCP, we care about all of them. For UDP, here's your list. And then we're, again, importing our targets and outputting to final. And that, again, will result in 3 different types of output. Now, aside from port scanning, like I said, it does a lot of stuff. The scripts are written in Lua. They can detect weird services, vulnerabilities, etc. Like I said, SMB info. Oh, yeah, that's a good one. Certificates. It'll pull back like the full certificate and just dump it out there, like all the, if it's a SAN certificate with subject alternative names, or, any of the info that might be in there, expiration, whatever. It'll pull back. Super, super helpful. And yeah, everybody's like all still probably licking their wounds a little bit from Log4j. So these things, these NSE scripts, the Lua scripts, they are released all the time. So Fyodor, the guy who writes Nmap, he'll roll them up and put them into the package, as new versions are released. But every once in a while, when there's like a serious vulnerability that ends up out there, somebody will go write an NSE script and make it available to the world, which is super helpful and allows you to basically scan for that Log4j vulnerability using Nmap and be very targeted about it. Like, I'm only interested in this one vulnerability, maybe against this set of systems. So makes things a little quick and dirty, as opposed to like, okay, let's fire up the vulnerability scanner, or maybe the vulnerability scanner hasn't even gotten a signature for this yet, which happens. So pretty slick, very, very helpful. Again, it's beyond port scanning, and and you would think like Nmap, it's been around since the 90s. It's definitely seen its years, like myself, but it is definitely a living, breathing thing. And you have stuff like this NSE script, which is like super new and scanning for a very new type of vulnerability. And at the same time, there's a guy named Soldier of Fortran on Twitter. I don't know if you ever seen him around, but he's a mainframe guy, and he released his own NSE scripts to detect mainframe type stuff that nobody really ever thought about. And even though mainframe is still like 100% in a lot of environments right now, especially in financial. So good stuff. This is not, I've used Nmap for years. I'm still learning how to use it. This is one of those things you could spend a lot of time, just learning about it and finding new things about it. So don't be afraid. Yeah, I mentioned input lists before. They can contain single IPs, ranges, wildcards in those ranges, or CIDR notation. So you can, do a /24, /16, /18, whatever. And I mentioned this output can be normal, greppable, or XML. And then -OA, always -OA. It'll save your day. Some other tricks. If you're in the middle of the scan and you're like, what the heck is going on? You can always hit the space bar for the current status. It'll tell you what's going on. You can also add -P- in place of -P1 through 65535. So it's, just kind of shortcut to be able to scan all ports. And then if for some reason you have to cancel a scan, or the box you were scanning from dies, or whatever happens, you can pick it back up with a --resume from the same directory that you launched it from, where the XML format is, because you use -OA because you love -OA. So you just launch it from there, the Nmap will pick up from where it left off. And dash open is cool to have around as well, just because it'll only report the ports that are open. You might care about things that are closed, and so don't use it if that's the case. But if you don't, you only want to know what's open, throw that in there, and it'll cut down the noise. So some ancillary tools around Nmap. These are a little lesser known. Nping, you can download separately on Linux, but on Mac and Windows, Nping kind of comes with the bundle, and it lets you ping any protocol and port. And so, if you think about your typical ping, it's ICMP ping, and there's plenty of things that can get in the way of that, firewalls, whatever. Maybe a host just doesn't respond to ping. With Nping, you can go after any port and any protocol and get that same kind of round trip time, packet loss, all the stuff you get from your typical ping. It sets flags. You can set flags on the pings. You can set a TTL. You can change your source IP address and ping from that. So it's like really simple packet crafting. It's like if you've ever taken a look at Scapy, for example, really great packet crafting tool, but kind of a steep learning curve. This one makes it a little bit easy if you just want to craft certain types of packets, and you can read the docs to learn all about that. It's great for performance testing, firewall testing, true round trip time, all that. So this is what an nping command might look like. So we're just going to talk to Google over TCP port 80. We're going to do it 10 times. And here's what the output looks like. And it's, pretty cool. Sent it at this time. This is when it came back. If you look down at the bottom, my max round trip time was 233 milliseconds, but average was 42, and that's about expected. Tells you how long it took for me to send 10 packets. It took 9 seconds, right? So very cool, very helpful. When back in my networking days, this was a really great way to get folks to kind of confirm that the firewall rule I just put in place is actually working. So good stuff. Another ancillary tool is the NCAT. So NCAT is Netcat, but a little bit better. And the reason I say that is because right out of the box, you're supporting SSL. It can do authentication. It can do output of an entire session, just like with a flag. You just put that as an option, and it can do allow and deny lists. So super helpful. It also does shell and Lua script execution. I think that you can certainly make certain versions of Netcat execute scripts, but it has to be that version. Netcat doesn't do Lua scripts at all. So the nice thing about NCAT is that it's very consistent. You can take it from platform to platform and just have it do the same thing all the time. So here's what a NCAT command might look like, and it's super similar to what you'd see with Netcat, right? You want to be root. You're going to listen on port 80. You're going to -K, which is persistence. So you're going to keep that connection up all the time. Don't kill it. And then you're going to execute this shell script. You're going to dump everything that's going on with this little server that you set up to things.out. Piece of cake, right? Really, really easy. Super well documented. It's just one of those things that doesn't get a lot of love. So I like to talk about it every once in a while. So if you aren't asleep at this point, give yourself a high five. I appreciate you hanging in there. This is kind of dry material, but if you like networking and ports like me, maybe not so much. So appreciate you hanging in there. And so we'll go into the next area of this talk. I would say use these commands to find the sauce. The recipe is on awful.network, and everything I just told you about will help you find the full recipe. So a little bit of a little treasure hunt for you. How about that? All right. So let's get lost in the sauce. What I'm about to show you is not my grandmother's sauce. Grandma's sauce was very good, very delicious, but not quite as focused on the meats. And I think that was just because of where how she grew up. It was just not a ton of money. But that's she brought what she got from Italy over, and that's kind of what the basis of what I started making here. She'd be yelling if she saw this recipe. And I did see there's a urban farming presentation. I think it's Tanya Janik is doing it later today, and she's going to talk about urban farming. My grandmother and grandfather had an urban farm going back to the 50s. It's just something you did as an Italian when you had a house. If you had a house and you had some land, you grew stuff, and so the tomatoes that she would use are different than tomatoes that I use, or garlic or onions and all kinds of ingredients. They just pull it out of the ground. So it's a little different, but it's definitely where I come from, my background. I remember being up there in that garden, running around and picking peppers and doing all that stuff. And unfortunately, with the power of Google Maps and that sort of stuff nowadays, I look at that old property and those folks never maintained the garden. It's just all grown over. I'm so mad. Like, my grandmother's grape jelly came from that thing, But anyway, let's get into it. Oh, there's my OG sauce maker. That's my grandmother. She's gone 15 years today. But it wasn't she beautiful? My goodness. All right. So this is I've constantly tweaked and improved this recipe over time. It takes time. You got to learn what you like. I'm not your sauce boss. Go make it your own. I mean, there's nothing controlling you. This is cooking. The only thing I would recommend is not to skimp on the ingredients. Use good stuff. Garbage in, garbage out. So don't use the garbage. And by that, I mean, use actual real San Marzano tomatoes. It'll have a DOC or a DOP label on it. It just basically means it came from Italy, which is where it should come from. Use quality meats, quality extra virgin olive oil, Parmesan or Reggiano rind. So this is one thing that, the rest of the sauce will cost you some money, but this is one thing you can actually get the rind in some cases for free, which I didn't realize. You just got to get to know the cheese person, and my cheese person just like gave it right over. But the other thing it requires is time. You got to just take the time. It's a Sunday sauce, So no to San Marzano style. We don't want style here. We want the real deal. Okay. So assuming you find the recipe with your Nmapping, you can use awk to figure out how to prep. And it's basically dice your onions, chop your garlic, handle your tomatoes. What I mean by that, don't be gross. I'm talking about some people like a chunkier sauce. Some people like it a little thinner. I don't want to see chunks of tomatoes in mine. So I use an immersion blender, just blend those babies up, and it's just nice and smooth. And then take the veal and the pork, lightly season it with some salt and pepper, and break up the sausage if that's your thing. I usually get like a pound or so of sausage, and I'll take half of it, take the casings off, and just make it loose. But you can do whatever you want. It's your sauce. It's your thing. So this is from about maybe 3 hours ago. I'm actually doing this right now. I'm not here to joke around. So you have the tomatoes, of course, have not been blended yet. Sausage, onions and garlic, and veal and the pork. Oh my goodness, it's already looking so good. The problem is I can't show you how it smells. I wish I could, because right now it's like peak sauce smells. Yeah, so then you braise this stuff, right? So add some olive oil, bring it to mid-high heat, do the sausage first, do the pork next, then do the veal chops, and you're taking them off each time, and just cover them up for a little bit. So what it should look like. Look at that veal, not quite done, just getting started. Ugh, delicious. So then you drain off the fat. Once you get all the meats cooked up, drain the fat. Use decent red wine, doesn't have to be anything expensive, whatever. And just deglaze the pot, scrape all the bits off, and it'll make like a nice kind of, almost like a reduction, really good. And then we start the sauce. And to do that, you take some oil, sweat the onions, do the garlic next, add some tomato paste, and then the tomatoes and water, the Parmesan rind, a little bit of balsamic vinegar, add a little salt if you need to. Again, your sauce up to you. And then add the meats in and get some coffee or whatever caffeinated beverage you would want. So we're not done yet here, right? This is just getting started. We're just getting things moving. So on the left there, you see the onions with that kind of, deglazed pot, with the red wine, and there's some wonderful tomato paste in there. And then in the middle, you can see, this is from, so I'm out here in Ohio. This is from the Market District. It's they'll charge you an arm and a leg for anything, but for these Parmesan rinds, they just gave it to me. And I think like the person behind the counter was just very like, really? You want that? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, here, let's take it. So, and then on the right, we got the sauce going. I don't think I have the meat in there quite yet, but don't worry, there's more pictures. I'm here to make you get hungry, so you can go make a Sunday sauce. Then for the meatloaf, or for the meatballs. So I use a meatloaf mix. You can get it pretty much any butcher grocery store. It's a three-way combination of beef, pork, and veal. I take about a pound and a quarter or so of that, 2 eggs, breadcrumbs, cheese, again with the Parmesan, some garlic, some parsley, some salt and pepper. Stir it around. Use your hands. Don't be afraid. It's not going to hurt you. And then just try to roll some equal size meatballs so that they cook up about similar whenever you put them in. Fire up a good pan. I don't like using like a non-stick pan for this just because it doesn't get that good like brown kind of color on it. So I like to use just a good good kind of like stainless steel kind of pan, that kind of thing. Keep them a little red inside. You don't have to cook them all the way through. They'll cook through once you add them to the sauce. Oh yeah, and I meant to mention one of these. So I use one of these grease splatter screen things when I'm cooking this, because you want it to reduce and you want it to cook over time, take a lot of time, right? But if you don't use something like this, your stove's going to look like a murder scene, right? We don't need sauce all over the place, so it's a good way to stop that. Yeah, this is what the meatball mix looks like after you've done stirring it up. Little meatball action here, finished up meatballs, browning them up, looking beautiful, right? And now we've added everything to the sauce and the magic occurs, right? Sleep for 4 hours. Take more time if you have it. If you want the meat to really, really fall apart, give it 5-6 hours. That's how I like to do mine, especially in the wintertime when it's super cold. It's just nice to have like a real, like kind of hearty, gravy, Sunday gravy. Odd Job said it. This is, sometimes called Sunday gravy because it's just, sticks to your bones. It's really, really hearty, and it tastes delicious. Give it enough time, and you can adjust over time. So rub a dub, serve it with quality pasta. I like to use fusilli, the corkscrews, just because it catches the sauce. You can use this for meatball and sausage subs. You're going to have way too much food to eat in one sitting. So feel free to use it for other ideas. You can also freeze it up. That's what I'm going to do when I'm done with all this. And bon appetito. Enjoy. So I saw some questions coming in. I went a little bit quick. Okay, so one question, is there a preference for the ratio cans of tomatoes to tomato paste? So yeah, I'll do basically a tablespoon and I'll do, see, I do 2.5 tablespoons. And so it's basically like half a tablespoon per can. But that's me. And to be honest, I can't I can't say that I've ever really like written this down to this degree before this talk. It's just a lot of like, throw this in there and see how it tastes, check it out, spend time, you take your time with it, and you'll figure out what works for you. But yeah, that's about my ratio today. It could change tomorrow.
Steve and I have been talking through your entire talk, and we've been talking about Sunday gravy. And I was looking at your recipe. I'm like, man, this dude is copying my recipe. Like, this is exactly the way, and this is exactly the way he cooks Sunday gravy too. I think I learned mine from binging with Babish. I basically just watch him, and I think he did prison sauce, the Goodfellas prison sauce, and this is very, very close to the way he would do that. Make sure you use 3 whole onions, 3 small onions. He was bringing up a great point about to mash. If you want to mash, if you don't have a food processor, if you have a potato masher or something like that, get your San Marzanos in there, and then you could even just take a potato masher and just mash down those tomatoes to kind of get them to break apart if you like that. Or if you like a chunkier gravy, you can just leave them in there and they'll stew apart. I mean, they will. This reduces for like 4 hours, and this can really become something special.
Yeah, I'll do 4 cans with the immersion blender, and then 1 can just by hand, just break them up by hand so that you get some of the tomato chunkiness in there. But yeah, it's not a ton of variation on how this goes down. I think, families across the United States, whenever they learned how to make Sunday sauce, like American Italian Sunday sauce, this is kind of how it goes. And it's not, in Italy, they don't leave the garlic in. I put the garlic in, I leave it there. It's part of the sauce, right? In Italy, they just put it in there to catch a whiff, to cook it up until it's cooked out, and then they take it out like it's a disease or something. I love the thing. Yeah. Dude, everybody can do it their own way. That's the whole thing.
Yeah, it's a really great thing, and it's such a versatile sauce. Like, you were doing meatballs, I do a mixture of beef and pork mince, so that way it's kind of more of a bolognese. You can put like whole like steak necks or beef necks and whole sausage, and like you can do whatever you want with this. This it's like the base for so many great sauces, great things to then just drizzle right on top of pasta, and you can just fish out some meat, have some sauce, have some pasta, and you're good to go. That's just, it's got everyone in chat hungry right now. So it's definitely already lunchtime for the central folks. It's going to be lunchtime for mountain folks here soon. So you're getting them hungry already. So someone was saying their wife is definitely a no chunks person for the sauce. So alrighty. Well, any other cool pearls of wisdom regarding sauce or Nmap you want to drop on us?
No, that's about it. But I'm always open to chit chat with folks. So here's my stuff. My Twitter's Kevy G with 2 V's. It's my email. Don't spam me, or I don't care. I just send you away. Or hit me up on LinkedIn. Always looking to connect with information security folks. That's what makes this industry so awesome, is that a bunch of us nerds will get on a Zoom call, like we don't do enough of those already, and we'll spend our Sunday talking about information security and hobbies. And you know, you're not going to find that with. I don't think there's like a Windows system administrator group that's doing that right now today. So you know, definitely appreciate the opportunity. Great to be selected. Honored for all the folks that you know, I've been speaking with. You know, thanks again for paying attention.
Well, it's been an honor to have you here, and I learned several things about Nmap as well, and I've been using it for quite some time. So, oh, did have one last second question. Chaz asks, what was the site for the recipe again?
Oh, it is awful.network.
Awful.network. Wonderful. Thank you so much.